Haunted NFL stadiums, true horror stories. This is Mr. H. You're listening to Masked Horror. The Disappearing Fan. I'll never forget that night. It was a chilly Sunday, a classic October game, with the stadium packed. My buddies and I had been planning this trip for months, especially for one of us, Matt. Matt was the biggest fan among us. If there was a record for never missing a game, he'd hold it. Jerseys, tickets, memorabilia, you name it, he had it. He lived for football, and his energy was contagious. The game was intense, neck and neck until halftime. Matt went to grab a round of drinks for all of us. "Be right back," he shouted, disappearing into the throngs of people. We watched him slip into the crowd, his bright team jersey standing out for a second before it disappeared entirely. Halftime passed, then the third quarter, and still no sign of him. We figured he must have hit a line or ran into someone he knew. He was popular with the ladies. As the third quarter ticked into the fourth, his absence started to gnaw at me. He wasn't the type to miss a second of the action. When the fourth quarter began and still no Matt, we decided to split up and look for him. We checked the bathrooms, the concession stands, even the fan zone area where he might have lingered to take photos. Nothing. People around us hadn't seen him either, even when we showed them a photo. Finally, we flagged down security, describing Matt's appearance and the exact seat he'd been sitting in. They scanned the crowd, checked the cameras, even looked around outside, but there was no trace of him. As the game came to a close, a creeping sense of dread started to settle in. It wasn't just that Matt was missing, it was like he'd never even been there. The stadium security took our report, though not with much urgency. They brushed it off as fans disappearing into crowds or getting separated, but I knew Matt wouldn't just leave us, especially without his phone, which I'd noticed was left under his seat. The police got involved later, questioning us, his family, even his girlfriend, but no leads turned up. Days passed, then weeks, and Matt was still nowhere to be found. I searched for him on social media, but nothing. I constantly refreshed my feed, hoping for a comment, a sighting, anything, but the internet was as quiet as he was. It was like he just vanished. Then one night, I stumbled upon a comment on one of my posts from someone anonymous. They claimed that Matt wasn't the first person to disappear from that stadium. They said there were whispers of missing fans throughout the years, all disappearing during games, often during the fourth quarter. Supposedly, these fans were the die-hard fans, the ones who'd never miss a game. Each time they vanished without a trace, leaving no footprints behind. The commenter claimed to have known someone who vanished there too. I didn't want to believe it. People like to lie all the time online, and people love conspiracy theories. I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but this one caught my attention. But it was just a random comment. How credible could it really be? I spent sleepless nights scrolling through old news archives, forums, anything I could find. Buried deep in the threads and half-deleted posts were stories, rumors about the die-hard fans who'd never left. Fans who disappeared, only to be spotted months, sometimes years later, wandering the stadium halls late at night like ghosts, wearing the same jerseys, the same expressions frozen in time. Some said you could see them in the reflections of the stadium windows, or if you were unlucky, feel a faint hand tug on your jersey as you walk through the crowds alone. I just don't know what to believe. Every time we go to the stadium for a game, we still search for him. For a split second, out of the corner of my eye, I always see Matt, just a glimpse, his face in the reflection of the glass, looking right at me. He never moves, he never blinks. I do a double take, and my heart races with excitement in anticipation that it will be him, but when I look again, he's gone. To this day, no one's found him, and no one can explain what happened. His face still shows up in my dreams sometimes, a flicker in the glass, a memory caught in time. All I know is that Matt was right where he wanted to be, a die-hard fan lost forever in the stadium he loved. In the spirit of luxury, we thought renting the luxury suite was the ultimate way to watch the game, a rare treat. We were a group of close friends gathered for my buddy Derek's birthday, ready for a night we'd always remember. And it was, but not in the way we planned. The first half of the game was electric, the crowd roaring, and we were right in the middle of it all, high above the field with an unbeatable view. But about halfway through the second quarter, something strange happened. I felt a chill, so sharp it made me shiver. At first, I thought maybe someone had flipped on the AC, but the vents weren't running, and when I checked, the thermostat was set to a comfortable 72 degrees. Yet, the air felt icy. I glanced around, wondering if others felt it too. Derek was rubbing his arms, and our friend Pete had already pulled on his hoodie, which seemed strange in a crowded stadium. Then, Lisa, sitting near the back of the suite, let out a startled gasp. We all turned to her, and she was staring into the corner of the room, her face pale. I saw someone standing there," she whispered, pointing to the shadowed corner behind the minibar. We all looked, but of course, there was nothing there. We laughed it off, trying to shake the unease, but I could see in everyone's eyes, we all felt it. The room had a heavy, unsettled energy, like we weren't alone. I tried to focus on the game, but then came the whispering, faint, just at the edge of hearing. It was as if someone was muttering, words too soft to make out, drifting through the cold air. I looked at Derek, who was frowning, his eyes darting around the room. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his voice low. One by one, each of us nodded. The whispers seemed to grow louder, like they were coming from right behind us. It felt impossible to ignore now. Lisa's hands gripped my arm, her knuckles white. "This isn't funny," she said, barely above a whisper. The room felt even colder now, and I noticed a dark smudge in the corner Lisa had pointed at earlier. I could swear it hadn't been there before. The fourth quarter started, but we couldn't concentrate on the game. The shadows seemed to shift, creeping closer, and the whispers grew louder, like someone was speaking just behind our ears. I turned to tell everyone we should leave, but Derek was staring straight ahead, his eyes wide with fear. I looked, and in the dim glass, I could see a figure, shadow, blurred but unmistakable, standing behind us, watching. Suddenly, the lights in the suite flickered. We bolted, stumbling over each other in our rush to get out of there. Once we were outside, the warmth of the stadium crowd hit us, and we looked at each other, speechless and pale. None of us could shake that feeling. We never went back to that suite. To this day, I still can't figure out what happened. We pre-gamed before we got to the suite, but it couldn't have been that. Maybe we'd had too much fun and too much to drink before the game, or maybe it was just a weird electrical glitch. But deep down, something felt off. But as for me, every time I watch a game, I have one eye on the game and one eye scanning my surroundings, just in case. Fleeting security. This took place during the time I was a security guard at my favorite team stadium. It had its perks, but the night shift was rough. I took the night shift at the stadium that week. I didn't mind it. Quiet, a good chance to get away from the house and maybe catch a break. I was running on empty though. My wife and I had a newborn at home, and sleep was a luxury we hadn't had in months. By midnight, I was struggling to keep my eyes open. I was patrolling the empty bleachers, flashlight in hand, radio crackling by my side. The game crowd had long since left, and there was an eerie silence that settled over the seats. It's a strange feeling, standing alone in a place that was roaring with life just hours before. You'd think you get used to it, but something felt off that night. I was about halfway up the bleachers when I spotted it. Or I thought I did. A figure standing in the shadows of the far section, just outside the reach of my flashlight beam. It looked like someone was still there, a tall shape, just barely visible in the darkness. I shook my head, thinking maybe the lack of sleep was finally catching up with me. I thought to myself, my mind was playing tricks on me. I raised my radio and called in, feeling silly as I described it. I think I see someone, probably just a leftover fan or a kid hiding, but can someone come up here? My voice echoed around me, hollow and strange, and the only response was a static hiss from the radio. I heard it then, a faint whisper, like someone mumbling. It wasn't loud, but in the silence, it was clear as day. It sounded like my name, though that couldn't be right. No one else knew I was up here. "Hey, is anyone there?" I called, my voice shaky. No answer. I aimed my flashlight into the spot where I'd seen the figure, but there was nothing there, just rows of empty seats. But the whispering continued, getting louder, closer, as if it was moving towards me. I radioed in again, my heart racing. "I need backup in Section C." My flashlight flickered, casting long, twisting shadows around me. And that was when I saw it again, the figure, now in the aisle below, looking up at me. I could barely make out any features, just dark eyes, staring, unblinking. I stumbled back, my hand shaking so hard I nearly dropped my flashlight. Who are you?" My voice barely above a whisper. But the figure didn't move. It was like it was waiting for me, daring me to come closer. Suddenly, my radio went silent. Not static, just dead air. My last line of connection was gone. I took a shaky step back, then another, my mind racing, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was sleep deprivation. Maybe I was just seeing things. But I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever, or whatever it wasn't human. I turned to leave, forcing myself to keep my eyes straight ahead, but I could feel it behind me, the cold prickle on the back of my neck. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like lead. "Just keep moving," I told myself, almost out loud. I finally reached the top of the bleachers and radioed again, my voice barely steady. "Hello? Anybody? I need help." Silence, and then a faint reply. A voice that sounded like my own but wasn't. The voice said, "I'm already here." Panic took over, and I dropped everything. My flashlight, my radio, and I bolted down the steps. I didn't stop until I was out of the bleachers, my heart pounding like it would burst. When backup arrived, they found my flashlight and radio lying on the seat where I'd left them. They searched every inch of those bleachers, but they never found anyone. Honestly, to this day, I don't know what I saw, but I know I saw something.